folks, let's talk about admission controller once again. I already had a video on what is admission controller, how you can enable admission controller features on a cluster, and how exactly to work in a different video, uh, part one of the series. And I'll have the link just below this YouTube video. But this time, I would like to talk l- more about uh, validation webhook and mutating webhook, and how we can, you know, create validation and mutating webhooks through Open Policy Agent. So before that, there are a couple of uh, article. Uh, Mainly, I would like to go through to make you understand how it works. So all thanks to those people who have originally written those articles. There are some pictures which are basically stock pictures. So, but still, like this one, it's an wonderful summary of. So there are different ways and various ways these policies can be put in places. So the basic concept is same, that you need to have admission controller. There are some admission controllers which are baked in with Kube API, uh, like image pool policy in one example. There are certain dynamic admission controller where you have to put your own logic based on your own organizational policies, and that's where this validation and mutating webhook comes into picture. Writing those webhooks are not easy. It's difficult. So this video attempt to show you a hands-on that how easily you can make simple things work first, and then we can slowly go into much more complex implementation. So the first thing I'd like to uh, this is another blog. I'll have the link in the description below. So and the picture is really, when I was thinking to draw my own picture, this picture I found in a Google search in this particular blog, and this actually really sums up things really good. So if we just go back to this particular picture, uh, we know when you send a request to the API basically it consists of API HTTP handler which authenticate, authorize. Then if you have a mutating admission webhook, the request actually invoke that webhook, and it goes to a particular service inside the cluster, and it traverses through the you know parse JSON, and then it applies whatever rules you have. And then once this object schema validation happen, the validating admission webhook also comes into picture, and it do validate. So validations happens after mutations. If you have both, then mutations will take place first and then validation, and then the actual request will persist to HCD. So that's the flow. But over here, it gives you much more detailed view. So first request received, then authentication authorizations will be performed. If it failed, then request will be rejected. Uh, if it succeed, then it will execute some logic. Check in etcd if any mutating admission controllers are registered. If it registered, then certainly it will try to communicate with the mutating webhook service, which consists the logic. Then mutating admission controller will parse the request, execute logic, and send response to Kubernetes. So Kubernetes parses the response to see if request was alert by controller. If it falls, it will be rejected. So this to and from communications from webhook, the post endpoint and the response will happen. And over here, you need certificate or caBundle for that communication. So if this Kubernetes allow the request, then it will execute some logic and then again check if etcd in etcd if any validating admission controllers are registered. So as I said in the other picture, that if you have both, then mutations will take place first and then validation. So then, if yes, then validating admission controller will parse request, execute logic, and send response to Kubernetes. And then same to and from communications will happen, and you need a certificate bundle or caBundle here. caBundle Kubernetes parse the a response. If it finds it good, then it will persist in etcd. Otherwise, it will fail. So basically, if you muted something here, let's say uh, label is required and that label is not there and your logic says mutation mutate that and add that label, the mutations will take care of it. But these validations, you might have a different logic altogether, checking that the label key is as per the norms or not. So even if mutation takes place, it might happen. So the chances are rare that when you have mutation and validations, you are not correlating these two logic altogether. But the theory is if mutations take place and that also violates any logic, validations will take care of it to control the same. So this is the way it happens. This is the theory. Now, how we go ahead and deploy a validations webhook and mutation webhook with OPA, Open Policy Agent. That will be an hands-on. Okay, so let's start deploying a few kubectl command just to set the stage and show you that how these things should work or meant to be work. Now, so we'll create the namespace first. So I'll just quickly copy paste few command which I have tested so many times, so it should work. Uh, Now, definitely open policy agent, all the objects will be deployed in this particular namespace OPA. And there are certain other things which I already have deployed for other tasks, but I'll show you that what exactly those things are and how they are related and how they are useful. So once I have the namespace, I would like to basically label the namespace such a way that webhook or validation webhook or the mutations webhook rules won't apply to this particular namespace. So that's what I'm going to do. I just created the namespace, so I'm labeling them with ignore, webhook ignore. I already did that for oh, sorry, yeah. For queue system, I already have done it, so I'll basically do it for the OPA. It's already there, as I said, like I already have tried this script so many times, so it's already there. So for the new namespace, this webhook equal to ignore key value pair for the level being applied. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a OPA server certificate. So before that, let me just show you what this contains. So it's basically, I do have a certificate manager. Uh, and that gives you an options to, so basically the caBundle, I do not want to use OpenSSL command. It should be managed by certificate manager. So the first thing I need uh, a certificate. Now there are stories behind this certificate, right? So this certificate, if you see, has quite a few field and values, and those need certain explanations to understand how these things will work, right? So the first thing is that uh, this certificate is getting deployed in namespace OPA. name is OPS server certificate. Secret is OPS server. So when this certificate will be created, it will also create a secret that will hold the certificate informations. And this certificate is going to be generated with a common name or CN, which is opa.opa.svc. So basically, uh, this OPA is the namespace. This OPA is the namespace, and this OPA is actually name of the service, which will return if you just remember the picture, which will get the request or the first JSONs, go through that JSON, apply the logic, and return back the decision that whether it has to be validated or mutated or not. So uh, our logic uh, or the policies will be checked by this particular service. So the name of the service is OPA, namespace is OPA, namespace is also OPA, so it is opa.opa.svc. This is why I'm taking time here, because this is something important. Your certificate needs to be generated with correct common name. So the DNS name is same as common name. Then I'm saying that who will issue this particular certificate? That's a cluster issuer, and the name of that cluster issuer is Kubernetes local issuer, and the usage will be server authentication and client authentication. So I'm expecting that I already have a cluster issuer present, right, with the name of Kubernetes local issuer. So how exactly I did that? So first of all, I need to check how this Kubernetes local issuer looks like today, right? So k get cluster issuer. So I already have that issuer. So let's see what exactly there. This I already have implemented, and basically I'm using the same issuer for other stuff. So it's already there. It's not like specifically for this particular demo I'm using it. So describe. Okay. Now, if you see that the status is true and it's using a secret name TLS key pair, right? This TLS key pair giving the certificate issuer the capability to issue a certificate. So then, okay, one more thing. I should get how this been written, right? So get does OYAML. So this is the code. So spec for certificate authority, it is seeking secret name TLS key pair, right? And so this TLS key pair is important here, right? Now, how do you create this TLS? So it is simple, like k create secret uh, TLS, then name, and then the secret. So that's the way you create. But when you are creating it, uh, you are not creating any particular general secret. You are creating a TLS secret. So for that TLS secret, you need a key and certificate pair. So that I already have created before, and so I created that uh, TLSCA key pair out of that particular key. So just to show you, mm, mm, I believe I already have it here. Yes. So kubectl, if you I'm highlighting the portion. So this is my certificate. This is my server key, and you can create your own key with OpenSSL commands. These are very, so this is not the exact command I used, as just a sample one. But anyway, once you have your key and certificate created, you can create the TLS secret, right? The same way I have created a TLS key pair which hold the CRT and dot key pair. That's it. So if I just explain, if you just describe on this one, secret name, then key, and this secret residing in certificate manager namespace. It has to resides in certificate manager namespace. So if I just do cert manager get secret, then let's do a describe or get is fine. Get secret TLS. You'd see that it has TLS certificate and TLS key. So this secret holds the key to my certificate authority and root key. So that I deployed as a secret in certificate manager namespace. Now the cluster issuer, using that particular secret to issue certificate. So when it will start issuing that, when I will deploy this certificate object. When I'm deploying the certificate object, certificate manager will look for it and it will found that a certificate request been generated. So a CSR certificate request will be created based on these specifications, and then the cluster issuer, which basically you know making use of this particular secret, will use that to issue this certificate. So let's do it. And for that, I'll simply create. Now, a couple of things has already happened. So, first things is that if I go and check get certificate OPA, I got that certificate. If I do describe, I would see that the certificate has successfully issued and create a new certificate request. So let's see if I have a certificate request also, right? So yes, I have a certificate request. What it says is that this is the name request is using this. This is the CA and this is a certificate fetched from issuer successfully. So now I do have the certificate issued by the certificate issuer. So now I can move further. The next thing I'd like to do, I'd like to deploy the OPA admission controller deployment artifact, right? So this is the stock example, and I just copied from there. But there are many things to notice here. First of all, if you have noticed that they are creating the cluster role binding. This cluster role binding basically binding uh, the namespace, the default service account associated with the namespace of OPA to view role. Then it's creating a role uh, config map modifier, which basically can update, patch, and watch if new config maps been introduced. Uh, this role can do that. Then role binding is actually binding this particular role with what? It's binding with, again, that service account. So this, with this OPS service account, which comes default with the namespace, you can now, see any config maps. So this config maps will be required later when you will try to deploy or provision new policies, new rules, right? So that's where this will come into picture. So this has to be understood. And then before I go to service, I'd like to have a look on the deployment. The deployment says OPA, OPA, OPA. These are selector replicas, normal stuff. Then you'd see one thing, that secret name OPS server. So as I said in the picture, that uh, any validation or mutating webhook require a caBundle to uh, uh, you know secure communications with Kube API. Right now, this secret, if you have remember that when I created the certificate, the secret name is OPS server. So this is already there. So if I just do k get secret in the same namespace where I have the certificate, I'll get this OPS server. So this OPS server is actually holding the all the secrets of the certificate. So that particular uh, secret name I'm volume mounting here, so that all this TLS certificate will get it, right? So yes, volume mount cert. So this particular will get this informations here. And then this particular image from Open Policy Agent basically do the job of checking or uh, validations of specific uh, versions and API path. And how can you mention those for replicate cluster like v1 namespace? You want something to do with the namespace, so you're specifying here versions v1. Now for v1 beta 1, you want to do something with the ingress, right? So you are uh, you know mentioning that as an argument. So this is the way you can specify which particular API you wants to deal with, which particular Kubernetes resource or object you want to uh, uh, enforce some policy. So that's the deployment. Now, with this deployment, it has to be abstracted with a service, opa.opa.svc. So OPA namespace, name of the service OPA. If you remember, when we generated the certificate, it's opa.opa.svc. Why? Because this is the way the deployment demands, right? So the service, and then you are just making use of port 443. So that's it. So this is the way it's going to be deployed. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to go ahead and deploy. So basically everything will be deployed in the namespace OPA. So again, so it created the OPA. So this was already there because I removed the namespace, but the rules binding, cluster rule binding is already there. It's a cluster scope, so I never removed that. Now, this particular rules created, this particular config modifier rule binding created, then service OPA got created and deployment. So if I just go ahead and check get all in OPA, I would see everything is running, right? Now I'd like to, and there are like two container inside a pod. What about that? So I introduced you to uh, one of them, but there is another one which basically does which basically takes care of this particular arguments, though that's kube management. So kube management and OPA, these are the two container together they make some make our life easier, because otherwise the entire logic you want to design, other than the policy, you have to develop yourself. So these two particular uh, container, one is kube management 0 dot means just the version kube management and OPA. These two do some standardizations there and help to make easy for us to create a policy, dynamic admission controller policies. So now what I'd like to do, I'd like to have a running log on OPA that will show that when I'm deploying the webhook itself or the rules, it's not actually giving me any trouble. So how can I do that? Simply, so this particular macro helped me to use K with autocomplete. So good. Anyway, so now I can see that at least everything good at OPA. If I want to check something else, let's do that. Yeah. So now we see that the kube management itself is also working fine. It's saying that it's loaded v1 namespace resource, starting watch at resource version. It's loaded v1 config map and to get this second. So basically it tries to get informations of whatever we passed here in the arguments. And for the ingress, static watch at resource. So everything seems working fine. Like it finds 13 namespaces, 29 config maps, and I believe no ingress because there is no ingress so far. So this is okay. Then if I just go back to, yeah. So why I keep this thing running, because mainly what happens that so many things can go wrong. First of all, your caBundle won't match. Second of all, your webhook might have some problem, and you would see that you are not getting the expected results. So which step jeopardize your entire deployment? That can be revealed if you just keep on watching this or monitor this particular log and follow this, and the next deployment step do anything bad, you can see that eventually here, so you can actually redo the entire step. So maybe you can do the same. So now once it is done, would like to move into the next step where we'll do some testing. One I'll do, so you have OPA in place. Now I can do a test on a validation webhook. I can do a test on mutating webhook, and we'd see that how different that result would be and how we can achieve the expected result. Okay, so let's start with the next uh, step. Now, the first thing we'd like to do, would like to deploy default system many YAML. What exactly is that? So this is basically a config map saying that how this admission controller should behave. So first, it will import the package system. It will keep track of admission. So admission request needs to be generated. So that API versions of that is admissions.kdes.io v1 beta 1. The kind is admission review. So our object wanted to get admitted. Now that review uh, needs to be in place, and the response should back whether it pass or fail. So that's what this config map is saying. So we'll go ahead and deploy. And it's in namespace OPA. So the moment we'll do it, um, kube management container will try to pick it up. If you have seen that log, that it's watching the config map. So if I set resource versions, not this one. If I have any rule, it will pick it up. That so that's fine. That's fine. So I'll keep on following this trail. Then I need a rule. So now before I go to the rule, uh, let me explain that what exactly this. So this is a stock example from OPA. It's nothing complicated. So let's say you have a ingress, right? Now you have ingress. So in the ingress, you are expecting to set rules where you can say like, okay, this is the host, and this is my backend, or maybe this is my host, this is my backend. So this is the way you want to set an ingress, right? There is nothing new, nothing unique here. But the fact is, when you are deploying the ingress, it's a namespaced object. There has to be a namespace. Now, for an organization, a particular namespace may have a policy that this particular cluster in this particular namespace, you can't only deploy ingress with this specific host name. It has security aspect. It has, you know, um, policy aspect. So think about that. Let's say this is your namespace creation YAML files, right? So let's do this one. Let's. So what you did, you introduced annotations in your namespace creation where you say, okay, these are the uh, domains you are whitelisting for your ingress. So anything with QA dot, you know, semcorp.com or anything internal.semcorp.com. For uh, productions, maybe you would say, hey, I want to whitelist .semcorp.com. This QA and internal for QA, but for productions, anyone can do like abc.acmcorp.com. But the same site for QA, it should be abc.qa.acmcorp.com, right? So you have, you can have this annotation simple, and there what you want basically, that when you create that ingress object, let's say when you create the ingress object, it should follow that rule. Means this one is okay one, right? So this is for production star.semcorp.com. So if I just put it side by side, uh, so for productions you said star.semecorp.com. So signing.semecorp.com is perfectly fine. So there should not be any issue with this one. But if you have uh, a bad one where this is for QA, let's say I'll deploy in QA. This one I'll deploy in production. So productions star dot so star dot semecorp.com, signing dot semecorp.com perfectly. So this one should go through, should go through. But for this one, if I want to deploy this in QA, well, QA saying start dot QA, definitely I don't have definitely this should not go through, right? Because it has to have a QA at front, and then whatever subdomain you want to use. So this is a bad one for QA based on these particular annotations. Now annotations are there. This is your policy, but how do you implement it? So policy is there. Now implementation is the key. So when you are trying to deploy this particular ingress, what should happen based on our previous discussion, that it should check, uh, we'll directly go to the validations because it's not mutating webhook, so it's a validation. It should parse the request, execute logic, and send response to Kubernetes, right? So for that, that opa.opa.svc or the service should get a post with that parse request, and then it should response back, right? So I'm expecting at the service end that it will get the parse request, and then it should respond. So uh, the parse request will contain uh, that ingress uh, object and its detail. So then Cube API to divert the request to the OPA.OPA SVC, it require a webhook which will constantly watch and divert it, right? So that's what is the next in line to be deployed, right? So let's go to that. So now we have the policy. Now we have the means. Uh, we have the policy. We have the means or the gears in place. Only thing is that it has to work seamlessly so that it can check for that policy and then deny or accept the request. So for that, what exactly we need to do here? Okay, so let's move into the uh, next stage here. So now we know we need a rule which will guide that what exactly expected when validations will take place, and the logic behind saying yes or no, right? So that rule is written in Rego, a language to write policies. And to show you how that looks like, let me oh, just so if I just go testing admission controller sample, and we should have a ingress whitelist. So this is that rule. So it says any operations which includes create and update. Basically, you're creating an ingress or update. And if the kind of the request is ingress, then do these checks. The checks are uh, fully qualified domain matches any host, valid ingress host. So this function taking the host, which are those annotation values. These valid ingress hosts are the values from the annotations of the namespace, right? When this request coming in, this deploying ingress object, Kube API already knows which namespace it's targeting, right? So it will traverse through it and it knows the valid ingress host, and then it will get the actual host which been specified in ingress. It will do the validations if matching or not, right? And if it is not matching, it says invalid ingress host, right? So that's what this policy will do. It's very important we understand. It's tough to write. Personally, I'm not a master in Rego, but it's tough to write these policies. But this is the way it will work. It checks a particular kind, and you can create the function. And in this case, it's self-explanatory what exactly it's doing. This fqdn matches any host, and these are the valid ingress host. How you're getting the valid ingress host? From the namespace. If you see this whitelist namespace dot input request namespace metadata annotation ingress whitelist. Ingress whitelist, right? So if I go back to ingress, the namespace itself, uh, one second. Namespace. Yes, so ingress whitelist. So then it's splitting it with the comma, and it's getting the list of valid host, right? So this is a simple logic. Uh, if we deploy this, then the logic in place to check the policy will be in place, right? So that's why it will be a config map. So let's do one thing. I'll do this, and I'll also will keep these two side by side. And let's say I want to see that how cube management is behaving, right? So if I do this, configure ingress whitelist trigger. The policy in place, but we have to deploy the webhook configurations, right? Now this is where we need that caBundle. Anyway, so first thing, this is admission registration when kind is validating webhook configuration. Uh, then it's a if you remember that the few minutes back, I labeled OPA and Cube API server to say that if you have the key value pair of ignore, then ignore. So basically anything, if you spawn up an ingress in the OPA namespace, it don't take effect. uh, it's just a safeguard so that if you want really if you want to bypass the policy to do something, to check something, at least you have an options. And so many things can go wrong, right? So for policies to be deployed so that you are not locked down from your own cluster, there has to be some breathing room. So that's what this does. And then you are saying same thing: operation create or update API group anything, API resource anything. Failure policy, just fail. Side effect, no. Admissions review version v1 beta 1. Now this caBundle, this one, basically coming from the secret, right? Uh, so if I just go back and say kget secret OPA, I'll get a OPS server, right? So if I'm getting a OPS server, and if I do a k describe or get, let it be get, and just to YAML. So I'm getting a uh, CSR, TLS key. So what I'm expecting is, in place of the caBundle, it should be the CSRT value so that it matches. It has to be. So if you just fire this command, you'll get You will strip down all the new lines and you will get a straightaway version of your CSRT. It's actually base64 encoded. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to just paste it anyway without doing that encoding. So this is the one, right? So this is already here, and this caBundle will make sure the communications between the API server to the webhook service is secure. Otherwise, it won't even work. And the service namespace OPA name is OPA. So if this is the case, I simply uh, try to deploy the webhook. Yes. If I just stop here, let's see that now it's actually getting some new thing here. It's getting this admission KD, so uh, this means this admission review will work, and this webhook deployment is a success. Anyway, okay, let's do this. We'll go back and try to create these namespaces. One namespace for QA, one for productions. Both has two different values in whitelisted domains. So I'll create those namespaces. So I have this QA and production, and now I'll try to deploy ingress OK in productions, right? So, so in production, if I just do k describe ins production, or I get that start.smecorp.com is whitelisted, right? So I'm trying to deploy ingress OK. Now this ingress OK is again going by the rule, going by the policy. So there should not be any issue to deploy this one in productions. So we should see the response post and response here. Uh, it's complaining about the versions, which is fine. But now I should see something saying that it's been admitted, right? So it has to be, I have somewhere down the line. Uh, Leader election is fine. Uh, yes, we are policy. Then it's trying to implementation specific signing So it's got the parsed JSON, then requested by result response allow true. So this is what happened here, right? Now would like to do the bad stuff. We like to deploy the bad ingress in QA. Why it is bad? Because it's saying smecorp.com while the logic says in QA that you can't do that, right? It says uh, whitelisted value is star.qa star.internal, right? Then the actual root domain. So let's try to do that. Uh, Sorry for that noise. Basically, when I'm switching to window, it's complaining about something. Uh, yes, now I should have been much quicker to stop this one. Now I have to go really way up to see that what exactly the post and response. So now you see error from server, invalid ingress host, error when creating this particular ingress, uh, denied the request, invalid ingress host smecorp.com, right? So we should see that post and response here. Yes, so I took a pause and I tried to be faster this time just to show you that how these things work. So now when it is saying that it's invalid, there has to be the response showing the same, right? So here is the response. This time I'm faster. So thanks to my reflex, if you see that the allowed equal to false because status reason is invalid ingress host SME corp. So let's look at the fact that what exactly it does. Uh, it received as a post, right? It received this and it responded back with this. This is the result, right? So that's the basic of validation uh, webhook.